While he was critical of Jeff Landry during his campaign, today Richard Nelson dropped out of the race for Louisiana governor and endorsed Landry. Nelson didn't receive enough votes in our exclusive poll to participate in our debate. Well, today Nelson said, quote, "While this was always going to be a difficult race, I am proud of the impact we made with the resources that we have." We have Eyewitness News political analyst and Gambit columnist Clancy Dubas joining us now. Surprised that Nelson dropped out of the race, or are you surprised that he endorsed Landry?
I'm not surprised that he dropped out of the race. I think the few people who know Nelson are very surprised, and many of them are expressing supreme disappointment that he's endorsing Jeff Landry. First of all, you have to understand, this is a guy who was at 1 or 2% in the polls. So outside of St. Tammany Parish, 97 or 98% of the voters in Louisiana never heard of him. So when people are seeing this around the state today, they're asking themselves, who the hell is Richard Nelson and why do I care? And those who do know him are saying, I can't believe, what the heck was he thinking? This is the guy who sponsored legislation to legalize recreational marijuana.
Right.
He was seen as the future face of the Republican Party. He's in his 30s. Jeff Landry is an old school, transactional politician, everything that Richard Nelson is not. And so there's the big question mark. I think this is mostly this is not a big deal, first of all. It would be a big deal if, say, John Schroeder dropped out and endorsed anybody.
Right, so this would have no impact on the race.
I don't see it having an impact. Nelson's voters are not likely to follow him to Landry. They're just not Landry profile voters.
I think a lot of the people just were confused. As you said, a lot of what he proposed and the things that legislation that he proposed goes completely opposite to what Landry is all about.
Landry needs to change the narrative in the race right now because he's been under attack, and I think he might be concerned that these criticisms about his ethics and his, dealings with crooked lawyers and the insurance scam, might be taking a toll. So he needs to get voters' attention off all the attacks against him and on to something else, anything else, and this is something else. But this is going to be a 6-hour story. Tomorrow it's going to be back on Landry and the attacks.
All right, thanks so much, political analyst and Gambit columnist Clancy Dubas, for joining us as always. Well, the deadline to register with that in mind is coming up this Saturday, September 23rd. Early voting runs from September 30th through October 7th, every day but Sunday. If you're eligible, you have until October 10th to request an absentee ballot. Election Day is October 14th, and we will have the first results for you on election night as soon as the polls close at 8 o'clock.